Tyler the Creator, worst to best. Been looking forward to getting this one done, and even on my birthday you're getting some content. That's right, I provide even on my birthday. So yes, let's do this. Tyler the Creator, worst to best. Tyler has been a huge part of the hip hop world since the late 2000s with his Odd Future stuff, and of course his solo material as well, which really caught fire and solidified himself as a new entry to the horrorcore genre, the kind of edgy side of hip-hop that has had its audience over the years. Of course, someone like Eminem has been pretty much at the forefront of that. But aside from Eminem, there hasn't really been as many mainstream huge artists that touch on kind of grimy and menacing topics in the way that artists like Eminem and Tyler do in the mainstream. But the closest I think we really got after Eminem was probably Tyler, and his music really started to take off on the internet, and of course the Odd Future, connection really helped that spiral him into more fame as well, alongside other artists like Earl Sweatshirt, Frank Ocean, etc, etc. It's been really interesting to watch his growth though, and his success in the Grammys and in the mainstream. He's had a lot of success over the years, and the style shift from that first mixtape to where he is today is quite remarkable. Honestly, I kind of find it mad to think that it's the same guy that makes the music that he is doing today as the same guy that made the mixtape Bastard. And I think a lot of people feel the same about Tyler. I think it's been quite an interesting growth and an interesting, career shift. It's not something you often see. Most artists tend to stick in that one sort of lane, but Tyler is one of a kind, and the gap between what he once sounded like to what it sounds like today is pretty insane. Before I go any further though, I do want to promote my Patreon. I would like to mention that you can get your own requests for these videos and other types of videos as well, and be a part of the Discord server as well. There are so many different perks you can get being on my Patreon. Of course, you'd be supporting me as well, which would be amazing. So please check that out. Please be considering to support me over there so you can get requests for videos like this in the future. But let's crack on with the worst to best. I'm going to go with these 6 albums plus Bastard, the mixtape. So we're going to rank from 7 to 1, his worst to best, in my opinion, of course. And obviously, please tell me what you think of my opinion, if you think I'm completely wrong, and what your opinion of his work would be. But he's definitely an interesting artist to talk about, and I've been looking forward to doing this one. And I will say, he's really grown on me over the past few months, man. I've been going back to so much of his work recently, and I've just been getting so much joy out of listening to Tyler. So he was definitely an artist that I really wanted to take off for this series, because yeah, where I once was with Tyler to where I am today is totally different. So this is an exciting video to be doing, and I'm hoping that you guys can understand where I'm coming from with my list. But let's start with number 7. I don't think the back end of this ranking is going to be particularly controversial. I think a lot of people are going to understand why an album like Goblin would rank at the bottom of a list like this. I think Tyler in this era was trying way too hard to be edgy, honestly, and I just find a lot of this album pretty hard to stomach, to be quite frank with you. I just don't really like this style that he's going for. I don't think he executes it that well either, really. I think he tries way too hard to just say as much offensive shit for the sake of saying offensive shit as he possibly can, and it just comes off really badly to my ears. And it's not like the production across this album is particularly that great either, even if you were to say that actually what he's going for lyrically makes sense and that kind of stuff. I know it's a bit of a polarizing debate, and I know a lot of people will say, oh, you just offended, and it's like, no, I'm not offended at all. There's a way to do it, and I think the way Tyler did it just wasn't that entertaining or done in a particularly good way at all. It just sounds really crass for the sake of it. I think tracks like Goblin just aren't particularly that great at all. I think She as well is just really cringy, and a lot of what Tyler's coming through with on this track just doesn't work for me at all. Up until Frank's chorus, which I think is really sweet and really nice. I do like what Frank brings to the table there. But for me, I don't really find much of what Tyler's doing very good. I think Radicals as well is exactly the type of track that solidifies what I'm saying as well, with the edgy stuff. Bitch Suck Dick. good God, this one, man, is just really wow, wow, wow. God, no. Sandwiches as well, that hook is complete arse cheeks, let's be honest. Like, this is what I mean, it's not just the lyrics and it's not just what Tyler's saying. A lot of this is just really poorly produced. It doesn't sound great. The hooks most of the time aren't great either. Like, this just isn't that good of an album, even if you wanted to look at it from whatever angle. It just ain't good. The saving grace is probably Yonkers, I would say. Yonkers, the grimy, dirty beat that he came through with on that track is so iconic. You can't deny this song, really. Again, some pretty edgy lyrics obviously coming through, but he doesn't sound as vulgar on this track. Like, some of the lyrics here kind of roll your eyes at a little bit, but it works for what he's going for, and I think there's something in what he's doing on this track that I think worked across most of his discography when he was trying to do this kind of thing. I think Yonkers was really the pinnacle of that. It's a shame that not every song sounds like this, but yeah, this is easily his worst.
Gave a lot of niggas checks, but I'm the only nigga to ever check Nike.
I have seen a bit more of a sea change towards this album, actually. I see a lot more people saying they like Cherry Bomb, way more than I used to see when it first came out. So maybe this one is a little bit of a debate, to be honest, having this as his second worst project. But yeah, for me, I think it's pretty easily down there with one of his worst. Smuckers, all-timer for me, that is one of his best tracks up there with some of his best work, like top 20 song for me for Tyler, easily. It's a great song, but again, similar to Yonkers, I just have a hard time putting anything else on that level with the greatness of the track that is. But good God, throughout this album you get some really poor mixing. Like, it really is hard to stomach some of this mixing at times. There are some tracks that like go really hard, but the muddiness just completely loosens and waters down and buries a lot of what's trying to happen there, like the title track Cherry Bomb. You've got the track like Fucking Perfect, which I find really corny lyrically, honestly. I do not know what Tyler's trying to go for in this song, but it doesn't work for me at all. I will bring this up as a point throughout many of the albums, actually, but the vocal modulating on some of these tracks sounds really bad as well. I'm a bit on the fence with vocal modulating. I think it's really hard to get right, and I think a lot of artists that attempt to do it just makes the song sound uglier than it probably should. And yeah, tracks like Run, for me, I just think sounds really hard to listen to. Like, yeah, this album's bad to me, but I know there's a quality to it that I think people have kind of warmed up to over the years. You know, maybe the fact that it is a bit of a messy album makes it kind of interesting in that sense, and I know some of the tracks do go harder, and maybe that as well could make this album, you know, impressive to some people somewhere, but for me it just doesn't work.
Motherfucking circus. You little niggas better check my French.
I'm as surprised as you are that this ranks higher than those two, because I was ready to write this album off, but revisiting it recently for this video, I actually thought this was better than I remembered. I think compared to those two albums and compared to some of his other stuff from that era, I think this album works for what it's going for more so than some of his other tracks that are trying to be this, you know, edgelord teenager shit that he was going for. Yeah, the hard knocking beat on 7 sounds great. I really like this one. The whole thing where he was, well, like, if you're offended, I apologize, and then he like kind of pauses and goes, I'm just lying, was quite funny. I mean, he's definitely self-aware with it, you can't really deny it. French goes hard too. Yeah, I'm really into this track. I again, was kind of forgetting how some of these songs sounded, but going back to them, they were certainly better than I'd remembered. Odd Toddlers obviously has the same sample as One Beer by Doom, which is interesting, but yeah, that transsexuals line, man. God, it is interesting to think like where Tyler is today, and the fact that he is, you know, a grown man now. How does he look back on some of these tracks or some of these lyrics? Because I've not seen him live, so if anyone has seen him live recently, I'd love to see someone comment just to explain to me where he's at. Does he do these songs anymore? Does he go back and play these tracks? Has he ever said in an interview how he feels about some of these tracks? Because I think the guy he is today would probably look back and cringe a little bit. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, maybe he performs all of these songs live, I don't know. But I don't know, there's something about some of these lines, man, they stick out really poorly, and I just don't know if he's the same guy anymore. Like, there's no way he'd be sat here writing lyrics on his next album that are anything close to what these ones. But yeah, I think what falters for this album for me is just the way it kind of just gets repetitive. Like, for the good tracks that come near the beginning, every other track kind of copies the same thing, and the layered vocals on Parade and things and just get a bit boring to me. It just all ends up sounding stale. Right up until Tina though, which is one of the better tracks, which goes for that Memphis influence, which I'm really impressed to hear him pull off quite well. Obviously that Memphis sound obviously is linked to horrorcore, but I don't think he's ever really had a track that quite sounded like this much Memphis influence in it than this one, which I'm impressed with. But yeah, overall I think it's a pretty average album with a lot of good, well, a few good standouts, but yeah, nowhere near his best. Igor, number 4. Yeah, we're going with it at number 4. Perhaps people will say this is too low, and I've seen plenty of people out there say that this is actually his best album in their opinion. I personally don't see it that way. I have grown to like some of these tracks more than I did initially though. I know I've given this album a 5 out of 10 in my review, and I maybe still stand by that to an extent, because for me, what he's going for on this album doesn't quite work all the time, and it's because of the vocals. I think, again, the vocal modulating across this album gets a bit sickly. I think him going in that Igor character, which I appreciate the concept a lot, by the way. I like that he went for a concept with this thing, but it's the way the vocals sound. If they didn't sound like this, I think I'd be way more into this album, but honestly, it just sucks out the energy of some of the tracks, listening to his kind of chipmunky sound voice thing that really gets a bit grating on the ears. It's a bit much. I do like a lot of the production ideas though, especially on tracks like New Magic Wand. I think that's a really creative sounding song. I think Running Out of Time is another one, which again, I will admit, that has grown on me since I initially heard this album. But yeah, I think tracks like I Think bang really hard. I think Gone Gone Thank You is a good track as well. There are good tracks on this, but yeah, it's just that style of voice that gets really hard to stomach for me most of the time. That's basically where I'm at. I've always said as well, like, if you don't like the vocals on an album, that's the hardest mountain to climb. Like, if you can't get with someone's voice, you can't really get into the album. You can appreciate every other element of an album, but if the voice doesn't work for you on your ears, you can't really move past it. And it's never been something I've been able to get past. On tracks like Earthquake as well. Really want to like this track, but it just never really clicked for me, man. So yeah, appreciate this album a lot more than I think I enjoy it. It certainly is an interesting release that provided a totally new way to view Tyler's music. I think, like, you know, what Tyler's music could become or could be was totally expanded for a lot of people with this album. And yeah, I like it for that, but as I've explained, it doesn't quite work for me.
And if I drown and don't come back.
This is lower than I would have imagined before putting this ranking together, but things have changed, my friends. Things have changed. I love Flower Boy. I really, really do. I think this was such an eye-opening album for 2017. What hip-hop could be, again, I'm going to keep using this because I think Tyler is actually quite a visionary artist in a lot of ways. But what hip-hop could be, I think, changed with this album, similarly to what Igor did as well. I think the softer side of things, the kind of gentler side of things really came through on this album in a really nice way. And I think what Tyler showed people with what he became as an artist really worked wonders for him, honestly. I think that new side to Tyler was perfect, and the music as well was just so well produced across this entire album. Listen to tracks like See You Again, listen to tracks like 911 Call Me. The hooks are so good. This is one of the things that his earlier work never got right. He never really quite made the hooks work, but good God, did the hooks sound good on this album. And the hard, brash Who Dat Boy is an absolute banger, my friends. My God. But yeah, this album is great. This album is truly great. It's aging really well. November is fantastic. Dropping Seeds with Lil Wayne is really fun as well. There's just so much to take from this album. It's so replayable. It's so joyous as well. It's got a joyous energy to it that I think really comes through well. The opening track as well with Rex Orange County. I absolutely love that track. Still one of my favourite Tyler songs ever. One of his best opening songs ever too. Yeah, I love Flower Boy. I love Flower Boy. I think it's a really great album. And again, showed a lot of hip hop artists how hip hop could be done. It's not just one thing. And I think he really changed the landscape of what, you know, rappers could do with their albums with this album, to be honest with you. I think it really did that much. It's great. Only thing I'd say is the last couple of tracks really weak to me. Glitter is really cheesy. And the final track is kind of just there for whatever reason. But Garden Shed with Estelle, that song right there, my God, what a track that is. Yeah, I love this album. Love Flower Boy. Really love it. And somehow there's 2 albums better than it. I always feel like this part of the video is hard to do because, like, once you know what number 2 is, you're like, oh, that's number 1 already. And I haven't even talked about what number 2 is yet, but it's always a weird part of the video. I don't know how you can change it though. But anyway, call me if you get lost. Love this album now. Again, my rating originally was a 7, but I've come back to this album recently and I just really can't stop playing it. I actually can't stop playing it. I keep going back to it. I'm having so much fun with it. That run at the beginning though, with Corso, friggin' Lemonhead, friggin' What's Your Name, like that whole stretch of tracks is fantastic, man. It's so good. Lumberjack as well. Lumberjack is kind of like the Who Dat Boy of the album, but don't write off Corso. That track is hard as hell, and I love it when he goes hard like this and makes it sound this good. It is so bloody good. You've got Hot Wind Blows with the lovely melody as well. Love that track. Manifesto is an interesting one. Kind of brings back his older days of, you know, going into like, I'm saying all this edgy shit, I'm going to be cancelled, blah, 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 blah. Not the best lyrically, I don't think he needed to do this one, but I still think it's quite good. Absolutely love Juggernaut as well. Uzi is so playful with it. You've got Rise, man. So groovy and so fun. One of his most danceable songs, I would say. It's got that similar style of beat that the Seed 2.0 does by The Roots. Don't know if there's any link or crossover there. I couldn't find anything, but maybe there is, or maybe there's an influence with that. Great song. Rise is one of his best songs. Maybe one of his most underrated tracks, actually, as well. And I've even grown to like Sweet as well, which is the 9-minute lengthy track, which I initially found a bit too long, but again, it's got a nice little rhythm to it, nice little fun vibe that I quite like and have grown to appreciate. Yeah, this album's so good, honestly. I've really undersold it with my review from a few years back. This is easily one of his best, and it's so replayable as well. My only main gripe would be probably Wilshire, which is a fantastic lyrical track that really details a great story, but as a song, it just isn't that interesting to listen to. It's certainly not engaging either, and I certainly don't think it needed to be as long as it did. But otherwise, I think this album is a hit. It's a hit. It's a hit album, man. And yeah, it's so good. Even DJ Drama with all his over hyperactive announcements and telling us that Geneva is in Switzerland doesn't really get annoying either. I mean, his voice kind of gets a bit much at times, but he's a lot of fun. And yeah, this is a great album.
Me and Slater just hit a curb. Bunny hops zoning out, listening.
I think people are going to be surprised with this, you know. I don't think people were expecting Wolf to be my number 1 Tyler the Creator album. But good God, it is just that good. It is just that good. If you'd asked me a few years ago, I'd have said Flower Boy easily. Even when Call Me If You Get Lost came out, I think I was telling people Flower Boy's still my favourite one, Flower Boy's still my favourite one, and yeah, it's dropped to number 3. But Wolf, I don't know, man, I think we underrate Wolf. I think people forget how good this one is. It's not like Goblin or Cherry Bomb where you keep trying to go back to it and you keep trying to enjoy it, but you still get nothing out of it, you still find it irritating, you still find the production weak. Wolf ain't like that, I tell you right now. The opening track, Jamba, yeah, sure, you still got that language, that vulgar attitude coming through, but it's a bit more controlled. And I think that's what this album gets right. There is a control to what he's doing. You've got Colossus as well, which is totally reminiscent of Eminem's Stan. But again, it feels like there's an inbuilt character and an inbuilt story, which I'm not saying there never was with Tyler. I just think it makes sense and you can see it more. The vision's there with this album. But even besides all of the edgy stuff, I mean, you've got amazing songs on this album. Answer is so lovely. I mean, I think the calling people and phone references, it's been hammered in a lot of Tyler Creator songs. He's always kind of referencing that idea. And this was probably one of the earliest tracks that's ever done it. But you've got Slater as well, amazing track. You've got Frank Ocean on this one as well, who sounds gorgeous on this track. My God. You've got Domo 23 with the hard as hell beat. You've got Tamale, which is one of his hardest songs ever as well. Holy shit, this track freaking goes. It is absolutely outrageous how hard this track goes. I couldn't believe it when I first heard it. An insane hype banger, man. You've got 48, which has a catchy hook. You've got friggin' IFHY with Pharrell. Again, really great hook on this track. There's just so much to pull from this album. Beamer as well, the whole track as well. That the 3 tracks that are squashed together on that. You know what I'm talking about. That is catchy as hell. Great rhythms on those tracks. Yeah, so much to love with this album, man. I couldn't quite believe it, how fantastic it is, and I see rarely anyone reference it anymore, but seriously, Wolf is excellent. I think there's so much variety on this album. Definitely his most diverse album. You've got those softer moments, particularly with a lot of the Frank Ocean inclusions on this album. You've got the grimier, sort of dirtier moments like Domo 23. You've got the edgier moments like I mentioned as well, which has always been in his catalogue up until this point of this album. Of course, you know, 2013 up until this, that was how he was operating with things. But then of course you've got the bangers, you've got all sorts. You really do. You've got all sorts with this album, and I think the variety really makes it a really interesting listen from start to end. It's fun, it's engaging, it's exciting, it's fantastic. And yeah, I'm surprised that I like this album as much as I do, but I think really more people would love it if they gave it more time, because I don't see much love for it at all. But it is fantastic. So there we have it. Ranked worst to best, 7 to 1, my Tyler Creator, worst to best. Annoyingly, he's probably going to drop an album this year because he goes at usually 2-year cycles. So this worst to best might have come at a bad time, but I'm going to go with it anyway. I'm going to roll with it, and that is my ranking. Thank you for watching. As always, do subscribe if you haven't already. Tell me your ranking in the comments if you agree, disagree. Tell me why. Have a good day. Subscribe if you haven't already, and goodbye.